I've decided to keep a journal.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paul Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Paul Schrader, where we watch every film written and or directed by American filmmaker Paul Schrader and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, show's hosted by two guys, and one of the guys, my name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Jake, how have you been?
I have been sweating.
Oh.
It's been hot.
Is it hot?
And yesterday,
Okay.
I took a trip to the mall.
Oh, me too.
Not just any mall.
Oh.
I went out to Santa Clarita because on Google Maps, it looked like their Uniqlo was very big. Got there, relatively the same size.
Extremely
Uniqlo.
Normal behavior, normal but Saturday behavior.
I did see something that is relevant to the show.
Whoa.
I believe a recent episode.
Okay.
Yeah. On a recent episode, no, it was a Japanese guy. I mean, I did, but we were talking about malls, I think maybe on the Touch episode.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
And I mentioned one of the things I like about the mall, or liked about the mall, was the Sweet Factory.
That's right.
Guess what they have at the Santa Clarita Mall?
Oh.
Now, this Sweet Factory, I don't know if it was official. There was a lot of like laminated signage that was taped up.
The Sweet Factory.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've changed the logo, or maybe it's a new logo, because like...
Leg.
I mean, I guess if Pepsi went out of business, you could start selling cans that said Pepsi, presumably.
Definitely. I would encourage that. Yeah.
Anyway, so...
Did you get yourself something?
No. This was... well, first of all, I'm trying to be health, but also...
Okay, you're right. Sorry.
This is a pick and mix situation, the famous Sweet Factory setup. But in true post-COVID-19 fashion, post-onset of COVID-19,
post-arrival. Yeah, I got you.
Yes. Mid-COVID-19. The little pick and mix buckets were full of individually wrapped little bundles of the candies.
Yeah.
Which was depressing to me.
We don't love that for our old friend, the environment.
No, or for reliving the pleasures of childhood.
Joys. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, where I just go stick my hand into all the sour Lego blocks, you know?
Man, you're making... Yeah, I do. I love those, but now I regret ever eating one because now I'm just imagining your filthy childhood hands.
I never did that. Never did that.
Through the sand.
But I'll tell you this. When you go to the Lego store and they have the pick and mix of the Lego bricks, and then now I'm auditioning for the freaking Sugar Hill Gang. You can stick your hand in there and that feels nice.
Yeah. Okay.
How are you doing? Are you febrile?
Oh no, I'm purely post-febrile. I'm one of these people that was saved, like in the film we're talking about today.
You are the Noel of the show.
Yep. People have wondered if somebody put a bullet in my brain at a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shaking your head and blood goes everywhere.
Yep.
Really upsetting. Some of the dreadlock blood. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Let's bring in our wonderful guest.
Let's bring in our guest very quickly. We have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/podcasty for me. That's it. That's all you got to know.
Yep.
If you want that, you already want that. So go there. We talk about other stuff. Bring our guest in. Our guest today, very excited to have her, is a writer on film, lead singer of the band Night Talks. Welcome to the show, Soraya Sebghati. How you doing, Soraya?
Hey, Soraya.
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. Happy to be here, y'all.
You did a thumbs up, and for a second I was, she doesn't know how podcasts work.
This ain't my first rodeo,
okay,
unfortunately.
No, thank God.
I mean, surprisingly, well, I mean, I guess it's unlikely, or given the fact that we have a Paul Schrader podcast, somewhat likely. But I was thinking about your different Venn diagram identities here, Soraya. And I was thinking about the fact that you're a Paul Schrader fan, not unique to our guests. I'm sorry. So we've had many of those. Somebody who
almost
knows
universal.
A lot about one Paul Schrader film, like an incredible, sort of startling amount. Also, we've had a couple of those. Models. Also, unfortunately, not the first model.
That is true.
This
is the second model of the series, as far as I know. Maybe even third or fourth.
So I think Rockstar is the obvious thing that now has fully set you apart, as that's a totally unique.
And I would like to, just to gas you up further, I would like to thank you for the band actually being good. Because if it wasn't, I would be nice and I would be very convincing. But I don't have to do those things.
He would hold up like several 10-run vinyl prints that he had bought. Just I love it. This is great.
But imagine my relief when I listened to, oh, thank God.
There is nothing more embarrassing when you meet someone who like has the thing they do and then it turns out that they're like not great at it and you're like, I love you, I care about you, but this is really hard for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you. I'm glad I made it easy for you.
Oh, so easy. I had a similar experience to that. I was on a Zoom call with my friend who lives in Mexico and he was telling me about his podcast. So, yeah. Godspeed, buddy.
Yep.
Isn't that cute? He does a little thing. How you doing, Soraya?
I'm good. It's a Sunday. I've been in the middle of this week of like I cannot for the life of me wake up before 9 a.m. No matter what. I don't know why. I keep setting alarms and then just going back to sleep, but like it's fine. We'll get through it. It's probably because it's hot, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Just like day-long siesta the whole time.
Yeah, and like
siesta.
I like on the one hand, like sleep is great, but like I'm the kind of person who I don't wake up early, but if I sleep past a certain hour, I just feel like a loser. And I'm like, I'm wasting the day. I'm wasting the daylight. Like I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know what I mean? So I am upset about the lost time.
Well, your band is called Night Talks.
True.
This is a day talk we're having now. But are you a night owl? Are you a nighttime person like the characters of the film?
I would say maybe more so when I was in high school or college when I was younger. I mean, I go to bed at like midnight most nights. Maybe I should go to bed earlier, but like I also can't stay up super late. Like I mean, I have stayed up late, but I don't usually do that.
All right, we believe
I usually like to go to bed.
All right, yeah, we get it.
I'm not a nerd yet. I swear, like not in that way. Like I have a social life. I like to go out, but yeah, I don't know.
We're going to have to end the podcast here. We can't have anybody who likes to go out. You're not allowed to like leaving your house and be on a podcast.
Unless it's under a bringing out the dead style labor contract that is slowly poisoning your psyche and driving you to madness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't think I've ever been paid for anything I did past midnight.
Whoa.
Not to brag. I'm just thinking about that. Well,
strange.
I guess if I stayed up late working on something, but that's not the same thing.
No.
We'll get to it. We have a couple bits of business to get to. First of all, quick correction. On our Touch episode, Ian put forth the idea that Touch might be Don Novello's biggest movie.
Oh, yeah, I did say that.
And podcasting from the artist in residence, Jeremy Allison, does the artwork for the show, reminded me that Don Novello does a voice in the Disney film Atlantis: The Lost Empire. You
Vinny.
Moron.
Vinny? Is that his name in the film?
I think he plays...
Milo? No, he's not Milo.
He plays Father Guido Sarducci in the film. I don't think he does.
I don't think that's right.
Is he the cook?
Oh wait, no, he's not the cook. The cookie is the cook, and that's like an old man.
He's the demolitions guy,
He's the
right?
demolitions guy.
The Italian demolitions guy, which I think is maybe like Italian a Sacco and Vanzetti joke or something.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe so.
Italian guys blow stuff up.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're an idiot. And then we have, of course, our segment, Paul the News That's Fit to Clint, where we talk about updates in the Paul Schrader, Clint Eastwood world. On the Clint tip, nothing. Guy is laying low. On the Paul Schrader tip, this is from, of course, facebook.com/paul.schrader.900, our favorite website. And August 2nd, at 4:14 p.m., Paul Schrader posts, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes.
I like cynical. I like ironic. But I draw the line at snark. And then some guy says, why even go see a movie like that?
The follow-up's the best part.
Yeah. Yep. Why even go see a movie like that knowing full well you're going to dislike it? Stick a fork in Marvel. And Schrader says, I was killing time on a walk when I passed the cinema and it was about to begin. I lasted an hour.
This is incredible. The idea for, extraordinarily 60 years ago activity to be on a walk and then decide to just see a picture all of a sudden.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, first of all, it's counter to the goal of the walk.
I know.
The movie theater is a sit.
Yeah,
activity.
The idea that you got bored on a walk and had to take a break to do the non-walk, that's impressive, potent.
So you got tired.
Yeah.
But also, like, what is he? I mean, I haven't seen it. Have either of you seen the film?
No.
Deadpool and Wolverine? Okay.
No.
I don't know what, like, I'm just trying to imagine what he saw in it. Like, he's been alive for the full run of Wolverine as a character or whatever. But if he wasn't seeing movies as a child because the devil lives there, he definitely wasn't reading comic books also. So, like, did $12,000 a month worth of cocaine Paul Schrader, like, get really into giant size X-Men sometime in the 70s or 80s? We don't know. And also, I don't know if he's like is he like a Don Draper who keeps up with everything and just goes to see...
That's what I'd like to imagine.
Ghost Rider,
so.
Spirit of Vengeance or whatever. Speaking of Nicolas Cage. Yeah. I mean, that's a good one. I shouldn't have named a good one. No. But has Schrader been going to see, like, did he see Shang-Chi, you know? That's what I want to know.
I think he may well have. First of all, because, I mean, there's Wong Kar-wai connections, and I could see him making his way to Shang-Chi.
I picked the wrong one. Did he see, like, Ant-Man and the Wasp? Not the third one, the second one, you know?
Yeah, that I can't say. If we ever talk
Eternals.
About great first question.
Yeah, it's going to be entirely MCU-focused interview with Paul Schrader. God, imagine. Soraya, you ever met the man? You ever talked to the man, by the way, Schrader?
I wish. I have not, but my friend Jess actually, his dad knows him because his dad's in the film industry, and he did tell me that once his father David posted a photo of my friend Jess and his brother Adam, and Paul Schrader did comment, "Good boys." So,
all right,
pretty cool.
That is,
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. The judge of boys, Paul Schrader. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so maybe there's like... I can imagine there's a taxi driver joke in one of the Deadpool movies or something, right?
Easily.
Yeah, I would imagine.
On the nose for him. Isn't his friend a taxi driver? The South Asian guy?
Truly can't say.
I've seen the first two. I barely remember them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a cab driver character. So
wow.
I also saw the first two, and the guy, it's really freaky how he knows I'm watching. And that's like...
that is pretty freaky.
Me.
Yeah.
What the heck? You know?
Mm-hmm.
The guy got married at a plantation. All right. Anyway, that is
true.
Paul the News. It's fit to Clint.
Yep.
Ian, when I said we had some business, you seemed to know what I was talking about. Did I forget something?
No, I just thought you meant the two questions and asking
Soraya
we have
that.
her
That's
history
not even
with
business,
Paul Schrader.
though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. It's time now for our segment, The Two Questions, which is where we continue to not really talk about the movie.
Yep.
Soraya, were you able to come up with a question for us today?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I was.
What do you got?
It's a question that has a follow-up. I was thinking about this yesterday. So... Being adults at some stage in our lives, I don't know how old you guys are. I feel like we're close to the same age, but
I'm this many.
Are there any food items that you would like to order a certain way, but you can't because you're an adult, and it's one, embarrassing, and two, you care about your health, and two, what is a food that you love that you wish you could eat more often, but you can't because you're an adult and you maybe don't want to die too young?
This is a great question.
Very good question.
I mean, I have maybe a unique-ish perspective to this that I might share with my co-host, which is that we don't eat meat anymore,
That's
either
correct.
of us.
Yeah.
But I think about fried chicken a lot. And the fried chicken, like the fried chicken imitators, you've got the various fake meats. You've also got somebody who just does a buffalo cauliflower or whatever, which is like decently good. It doesn't hit the same heights. And so I very much wish that I could get a big bucket of fried chicken that was somehow not harmful to a chicken. And also I wish that I could eat the whole thing and not feel it. Like, I kind of wish I had a hole in my stomach like a cow at an agricultural college, and some animal husbandry student could just reach in and grab the food as it falls. So that I can enjoy the taste without
and then
any
turn
of
it back
the
into a living chicken. I'm not sure I'm totally following this.
No, just so that I don't feel. I just don't want
okay.
to feel what you feel like after you've eaten a bucket of fried chicken.
I see.
And I also don't want any of the health consequences. But thirdly, I don't want to engage in any kind of bulimic behavior.
No,
because I don't like puking.
You've really thought about all the angles on this.
Apparently, I didn't even realize this was in there. But that's me. And also, when I was a little boy, I used to order hamburger ketchup only. And I no longer want that, but it would be interesting to try it again, just to see,
Sure.
Little boy day. Little boy day.
Little boy day.
Ian, what about you?
Yeah, this is a good question. Certainly a lot of meat type stuff comes to mind. Although I agree with you, Jake, that in terms of the stuff that I missed, it's almost entirely stuff that is further from being just pure meat. Like either something buried in a very complex fast food burger or like it's something that's heavily spiced. Like I don't miss steak. I don't miss a roasted chicken or something. You know, these sort of platonic ideals. I would say something that I indulge in, which is embarrassing and wouldn't do in public, but do in the privacy of my own home, is is using an obscene amount of mustard when I will eat like a fake hot dog or something. I can share this because I did this less than 12 hours ago. So in the privacy of my own home, I ate some soy dogs and absolutely, truly, my girlfriend is upset by the amount of mustard that I put on these things.
Well, she's probably upset because down there that means I am dog. And so she thought you were eating freaking dog.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
How much mustard are we talking and what kind?
See, I guess that's the other childish thing.
French's yellow.
Yep. Quite literally French's yellow mustard. Yeah. And I think I like to believe my tastes are fairly adult.
From the days of Emperor Maximilian. When Mexico was a French colony.
One of the things he brought to us here in Mexico. Yeah. Was that French mustard.
How'd that go down?
Oh, it went down beautifully. Yeah.
How many hot dogs you say that you ate?
3 hot dogs, 2 buns. If that helps.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I mean...
Feels like you're working on something over there.
Is one of them nude or 2 of them doubled up?
2 of them doubled up. Got a double dog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
I thought maybe you were doing like protein style in the last dog. Okay.
I mean, nothing wrong with that, but no, I wouldn't do that.
Sure.
And in terms of health, I guess, sadly, the most boring adult answer is that I do mostly eat whatever I want. But now, beyond a certain portion, I just can't. Like, if I try to eat too much sugary stuff or something, my body will just tell me, like, this is very stupid. This is not worth it at all for you. And then I don't even have to make the conscious decision. I just say, yeah, this is too much. That's all right.
That sounds cool. I hesitate to say I would like to get a fecal transplant from Ian Ryan because of some of the other stuff I know about him. But that particular sort of biological signal,
you trade that for maybe having to contract giardia for a short period of time. Yeah.
I'm rolling around in the freaking manure with this guy all the time, but that's just, hey, enough about the show. Soraya, what about you? What's your little boy meal?
My little boy meal. When I was a kid, I was totally addicted to. When I was 10, I discovered burgers because I was like a really picky eater. And I also didn't enjoy eating when I was a kid. So when I was 10, I was like, oh shit, cheeseburgers rock. But I hated vegetables. So I would just get cheeseburger plain, just meat cheese bun.
Damn.
And like sometimes, so I do still eat meat. But like, so sometimes I'm like, damn, it would be nice to like just go somewhere and not be embarrassed to say like plain cheeseburger. So I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Like, give me the lettuce, give me the onions, give me the stuff that's like not enough to make a difference, but will add to the flavor and is still good for me. And then yesterday, my boyfriend Jacob was out of the house for a little bit, and he usually like, not in like a weird way, but we just like keep each other in check. Like, hey, are you eating too much candy today? Or like, did you eat all the ice cream? So I was like, hey, chat on Twitter. Jacob's out of the house for a few hours. Should I make a grilled cheese? And I got enough yeses where I made a grilled cheese, and it was awesome. You know, you do it the way they do in a diner. You cover the bread in mayonnaise, and then you just stick a bunch of American cheese in there, and you let it go, and it was fucking delicious. So that's that. I don't really have much of a sweet tooth, which is crazy. I'm a savory girl. And then the thing that I have not been able to give up is popcorn. I am like a popcorn fiend at the movies, but like it's to the point where I eat so much of it that multiple times I have gotten physically ill, like gone home and thrown up
extremely
after.
Relatable.
Oh yeah.
And then like I still like will go to the movies the next day and get popcorn and eat a fuck ton. Like nothing happened. Like I love popcorn.
Will you get popcorn even if you're going to see like, you know, Solo or something? Will you get popcorn if you're seeing like the Emmett Till movie, you know, like something?
Unfortunately, so okay, embarrassing admission. So I saw Zone of Interest. This is not the embarrassing part. I saw
Perfect
Zone
example.
of Interest twice. Yeah. I saw Zone of Interest twice in theaters. I went to like a preview screening at the Arrow with Jonathan Glazer doing a Q&A in person, and it was awesome. I 100% got popcorn at that one. And then I went a second time at the Vista. I took Jacob because he didn't go with me to that preview screening, and I also got popcorn at that one. And I realized that might have been inappropriate, but I was hungry, and I love a popcorn meal, so not proud of it, but I'll be honest.
Hey, look, I'll tell you this. I went to see Zone of Interest at the Vista, and I got Milk Duds, so maybe worse. Because there's a scene in the film where they're like eating chocolate, I think.
Yeah, and true.
At that point, I stopped eating the Milk Duds.
Wow, toss them aside.
Yeah. I hate to double dip on the question, but I did remember a better answer, which is that when I was a little boy, I would take the loaf of bread and pull out all the middles of the bread and make a ball and eat it like an apple.
Okay, I didn't do that, but I did love to pull out the middle and like make it into small chunks and like squish it up and then eat it. So like I kind of feel that. Yeah.
Same deal. Yeah. Ian is disappointed in me somehow.
I'm disappointed, despite this is also a thing that people sometimes do with bolillo in Mexico. I've seen people take out the milk before. And
I'd do that right now.
But I'm not condescending to you guys in terms of popcorn stories. I used to get the jumbo popcorn, and then in truly cheap but also popcorn loving fashion, I would just take the box, the carton, whatever, home with me and then bring it back the next time because it's a free refill. So infinite free refill.
Well, and also,
however,
your mother's son, she's a real conserving,
that's true.
Recycling type of person.
Although she would never stoop to these lows. I don't want to drag her down with me. However, I did get caught in New York once because I lost track of the order of my boxes, and I brought in one that the guy at the 42nd Street Lowe's was able to clock the fact that it was a Star Wars box from the previous year and said, you cannot get a refill on that because that is a year old. And I said, oof, I'm leaving the theater. I'll see you later, pal. Thanks.
So when you cut the hole in the bottom, did you keep the little circle of paper to tape it back on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ian just like it's not about anybody else. It's just for the hot oil. That's yeah. Thank you for the question, Soraya.
Great question.
Honestly, we should have a little boy food podcast. I like this. Yeah. I guess there's most podcasts.
That's
are
a
probably
lot
that.
of them. Yeah.
Ian, did you have a question, or should we go with mine?
I know you have one locked and loaded. Please.
This is a quick one. Where were you on New Year's Eve, 1999?
I was at my grandparents' apartment, I think, because my parents were at a party. So
nice.
Yeah, I was hanging out with my grandparents. I think we had the ball drop on TV and was just doing arts and crafts and eating weird little snacks and drinking a lot of diet caffeine-free Coke.
Ooh,
yeah.
We call that Catherine 3 Diet Coke around here because I said it wrong once and thought it was funny.
Yeah, that was the big Costco. That was the big Costco purchase my grandparents would always make. Yeah. They loved Costco and they would buy just boxes and boxes of that shit. Yeah.
That's grandparents' soda for sure.
That sure is. I'm in a pretty similar position. My family went to one of the wealthier people that we know, their house, and I was in for the first time in my life, was in one of those like leather lazy boys that reclines all the way back, and I was just enjoying myself, sort of, rocking back and forth, drinking of course, caffeine-free Sprite. So I was also soda time in 1999. Well, they're all
caffeine-free, though.
Right. That's what I said, of course. But yeah, my parents didn't let us drink caffeine soda. So
I, of course, was at the very peak of a month's, maybe year-long rolling panic about the end of the world. I had been taken to a number of
the only 7-year-old who had or 8-year-old who had somehow been convinced of Y2K.
My mother took me to a church. We didn't go to church, but this was like, I don't know, maybe this lady will help. Yeah, went to an Episcopalian guidance counselor of some kind. But so I'm having my own private take shelter experience where everyone else is acting normal and I know the world is going to end. But we also went to the richest family we knew's house, and where the father of the family had redone a room of their house into basically like an old timey saloon.
Whoa!
With like the tin ceiling and a big bar with the...
That's wild.
Yeah. And so we were there with, all the parents are, I assume, having sarsaparilla or something.
Yeah.
And the other kids are falling asleep to the Iron Giant or something like that. And I'm just like roiling with anxiety.
Oh
and
my God.
And I believe
You have,
asking my mom, like...
A child-sized sandwich board sign. You're like the
part of
nun in this film that we're going to talk about.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was about that tall. Part of the the strategy to talk me out of this was that they had explained time zones to me, and they're like, well, do you think whose time zone is gonna signal the end of the world? And of course I was like, well, it'll just happen in Hawaii first.
This is a classic error of trying to logic somebody who has been caught up
New
in
York first, I guess.
paranoid
Yeah, and then
fantasy.
Hawaii after us. Yeah,
we know this doesn't work though.
No, but the world actually didn't end until about 9 months later.
Sure. Yeah.
When you think about it.
Your birthday?
Yeah, well, day before. My birthday is September 12th. Soraya, for your information.
Oh my God. Well, so my half birthday is 9/11, so there you go.
Oh my God. We're inching
Yeah,
ever
that's
closer. Yeah. This
Yep.
is great.
Yeah. Somebody call in, what is Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's name in End of Days? Is it like Jericho Kane or something?
It's something like that. Yeah.
It is Jericho. I think it's just Jericho.
Okay.
I don't know where I got the Kane from. All right, that's enough of that bullshit. Okay, great. It's time to talk about the movie.
Let's talk about the movie.
The movie is... I'm going to kind of stretch it out for the listener to build some suspense. It's Bringing Out the Dead, directed by Martin Scorsese. Have you heard of him? Written by Paul Schrader, based on the novel Bringing Out the Dead by Joe Connelly. The film was released October 22nd, 1999, New Year's Eve. There you go.
Yeah.
Took him a second. Good movie. I'm going to put that out there.
Getting in
I'm gonna say
early.
this is a
Good movie.
A good movie.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Now, Soraya, you've told me that you watched this movie now, I believe, 4 times this year.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What's your relationship to the film, to Schrader?
Do you
What's
like the film? Yeah.
Give us your history, at least, with it.
Okay, I'm trying to remember what my first Schrader was. I will say I was definitely a little bit late to the game in general. I came to my film loving, I would say, late. Also, just, I was a fan in general, loved stuff like when I was in 8th grade, I loved Clockwork Orange for some reason. But the quick version is when the pandemic happened, I was like, finally, I can watch everything that I have lied to 40-year-old dudes about having seen so that they don't get mad at me, and I can catch up on everything. And then I was like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. So I think it was either Taxi Driver or the first Schrader I watched was probably First Reformed, which is also funny because it's very late. But fucking love the man, love his stuff. Went to the Master Gardener preview screening at the Arrow where he did a Q&A and went off and said some amazing things, and it was really fun.
Nice.
Terrific.
I think I found out about this movie because I was talking to some friends about movies, as you do, and my friend Sarah, I think, brought this one up because I think we were talking about the best drug trip scenes in movies, and she had brought this one up, and I watched it, and then I started writing essays on movies just kind of for fun a little bit ago, and I wanted to write something that and I won't say where, but I submitted it somewhere and it got rejected, which is totally fine. It was just a nice exercise to write something for a prompt anyways.
Stormfront. It was Stormfront.
Yeah, exactly. It was for Breitbart, and then I ended up just writing an essay on it, and I put it on my Substack. But so that's why I watched it so many times, because I watched it to take notes, and then I watched it again and took more notes, and then I watched it another time, and then when it was time for the podcast, I was like, okay, time to watch it again. So
an old friend.
I love this movie, and I'm surprised by how many people think it's a lesser Scorsese work and all of that stuff, because I think it's very much, I don't know, his thing, and it's very good. So I just don't know why people are like, it's fine, skip over it, because it's a great movie.
I think this one is, for me at least, with my limited scope of how other people think and behave, this one feels like this is the cool the cool Scorsese to like right now. Like, this is trendy, I think, to be not in a negative way. It's just now this movie's having a reappraisal as we speak. It's having
I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, Criterion put it out fairly recently, I think, right? Or who put it out on 4K? Somebody did.
It wasn't any of the boutique ones. I'm pretty sure it was just I think it was just the studio. I don't know if it was like, because it wasn't Criterion, it wasn't Arrow.
Oh, it's Paramount.
Oh, yeah.
Whoops.
All right.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it's getting, I think this one has a 4K before, like, what's another one? Does Casino have a 4K? Hugo, probably. Probably before Hugo. But yeah, I watched it within like the last couple of years, hey, you should check this out. Rain. And maybe even during COVID, like, because the movie obviously has taken on increased resonance in the last few years, I think. Probably contributed to its second life. But yeah, I think, and something unlocked for me while watching the film, which is that when we talked about Light Sleeper on this podcast, and I was a little bit like underwhelmed by Light Sleeper, I think it's because I thought it was going to be this movie, basically. Specifically.
Yeah.
Because it's about about a guy who's not sleeping. And so...
True.
Right.
Look, so true.
I'm only human. I'm noticing
You're
patterns.
a simple man, yeah.
Ian, what's your Bringing Out the Dead history?
I think we're all on similar pages in that I saw it for the first time just a couple of years ago, also quite late in my Schrader and Scorsese journeys here, but I'm with you guys in the sense I'm a little confused. This and After Hours are sometimes put forward as like these more niche Scorsese films, right? And yet it's kind of hard for me to gauge because critics at the time did seem to like both films. So I think it's maybe just a more question of commercial breakthrough popularity or something. But I know like Griffin Dunn talking about After Hours said that, like with each generation, it's quadrupled or something in part because of internet accessibility and word of mouth and all these things. And I would imagine the same thing is part of what's happening with Bringing Out the Dead now. But Roger Ebert gave Bringing Out the Dead a 4 stars. It's not like people totally didn't recognize it, right? But I think you're absolutely right, Soraya, that it's just not one that people are chattering about or like that any dads are going to recommend to you or something necessarily. So it's a different zone of Scorsese and Schrader collaboration.
A zone of interest, if you will.
Yeah.
Have either of you seen Kundun?
No.
Okay. I have not. We discussed it. I've been afraid to watch it. I told you both because I've been afraid of what Marty is going to say about
it. Was really
communism.
Scary.
And
No, it is. I told Ian, there's a scene with Mao is a character in the film, and he's played by the guy who goes on to play the father of Lawrence in School of Rock, who tells
the guitar
I
player,
have
to watch this.
Insanely
the guitar
crazy.
player dad, your son is very skilled, which I have never said that line in any kind of accent, and anyone who says I have when I was in 8th grade is wrong. But the Mao scene is I haven't seen the interview, but it reads exactly like the trailers for the interview, like that level of nuance is given to Mao that Randall Park gives to Kim Jong-un. From what I can tell,
I'm afraid of. And weirdly, you said that it played out fine, but the fact that it's Deakins and Scorsese and Philip Glass, I think, was almost like too much mainstream prestige for him. I just thought maybe it would be overwhelming.
It's a very beautiful film. The craft is, obviously extraordinary. Everyone is really good at this.
Right.
But it's written by Melissa Matheson, who wrote E.T., and I think it has about the, intellectual rigor of the film E.T., which is fine for E.T. I think E.T. is a masterpiece, and it's a movie that is about child emotions.
Yes.
And Kundun is
precisely
about adult.
A child, but presumably through adults' eyes, and then not a child anymore.
We have an old friend returning to the show, Richard Schickel, who wrote the Clint biography that I talked about so much when we were talking about Clint Eastwood. He wrote a book called Conversations with Scorsese that has been a resource for me here. Scorsese sees Kundun and Bringing Out the Dead as very similar films because they're both about compassion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But in that, he also talks about how he left out the CIA stuff. That's all he calls it. But he said he left out the CIA stuff from Kundun. So he at least knows there was CIA stuff.
Okay, that's good.
But just to sort of transition us into our conversation about this film, in a piece written in Bright Wall Dark Room, or for Bright Wall Dark Room. Can you be in a website?
You've been trying, based on what I've observed. Yeah.
Hey, come on. A lot of those women really like when I log on. Wait, where did it go? Anyway, whoever wrote the piece, they explain, as Nicolas Cage says in the film, I grew to understand that my role was less about saving lives than about bearing witness. I was a grief mop. It was enough that I simply showed up. And as this writer points out, in Tibetan, Kundun means presence.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. Where should we go first? Do we need a little plot summary?
I'll hop in really quick on what you just said.
Please.
With this movie, obviously there's like a lot of biblical stuff, of course.
Absolutely.
You got the Catholic God and you got the Calvinist God, Schrader and Scorsese going for it, of course. But so the word martyr in Latin means to bear witness. So
okay. Yeah. We should say, Soraya, you've written a wonderful piece on your Substack that you mentioned, but that really like explicates all kinds of references and allusions in the film.
Yeah, Eliot, Poe, all sorts of great stuff that I'm sure we'll touch on somewhat here. But
it's a bit of a like a glossary of symbolism in the film, which I appreciated. So thank you for doing some of the work for us. And Scorsese, one of the only things I knew about his opinion of this film was basically that in the book, which was written by this guy, Joe Connelly, who basically just wrote this book, who was an EMT himself. Mm-hmm. Apparently there's a ton of religious symbolism in it, and Schrader cut most of the like explicit religious symbolism out because, as he said, basically he and Marty were too old for that stuff. Like that's a young man's game.
Also, very funny thing for Schrader to say, like, I've aged out of religious symbolism. Okay, buddy.
I gotta shout out the Guardian piece from 1999, nice which calls them aging bulls. It's pretty funny. Come on. Those Brits over there, huh? Ian, would you like to summarize the plot for us?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we'll do a one sentence, which is just that this follows an EMT in New York City over the course of, in a review I saw 48 hours, but it seems more like 72 or something.
They were reviewing a different movie.
Yeah. Over the course of a few nights, he's basically at the end of his rope and is haunted by the ghosts of people he's lost and is sort of unstable, not sleeping, etc. So that's the brief synopsis. But basically, we have Nick Cage as Frank Pierce. The film opens with a little line that says, this film takes place in New York City in the early 90s, which I think is very funny to say about something.
Schrader's first film in New York in like 15 years.
Right. That's true. But also, like, it was the film came out in 1999, so it's cool to say this was
the early 90s.
A historical piece. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And where we get a lot of taxi driver type stuff, right? We're like in the ambulance driving through New York City, cutting to Nick Cage's eyes, and there's blues rock playing, and there's some kind of Schraderian verbal journaling that he does throughout the film. So we don't get an actual journal, but he gives narration that is often sort of like reflecting on his mindset or what's going on with him. And he talks about seeing ghosts, and particularly this ghost of this young woman named Rosa that died on his watch.
Isn't it just Rose?
Oh, is it Rose? Oh,
I think it might just be Rose. I mean,
okay.
Did you watch the film in Spanish?
Truly. Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure where I get this idea from. It's happened before. So he rides in ambulances with a few wonderful actors that I'm sure we're fond of here. We get John Goodman, we get Ving Rhames, and then the more complicated Tom Sizemore. But we get all sorts of encounters. I don't know if I can run down all of them. We'll probably just let some of them come up naturally. But the big semi-romantic or spiritual plotline throughout the film is that one of the first people they go to is this old man, Mr. Burke, who is dying of cardiac arrest for some reason, seemingly, in an apartment. Patricia Arquette is there. It's his daughter, and Nick Cage saves the guy, but talks about the fact that at this point in his career, his life, he has this sense that some people are ready to move on, that their ghosts want to be left alone.
Right.
And this Mr. Burke, they basically bring him back, and he's in the hospital for most of the film, but he constantly needs to be defibrillated. And Patricia Arquette and the rest of her family are sort of watching their father struggle. Is he having brain activity? Is he not? And this is sort of demanding of Frank Pierce a sort of like emotional intervention, maybe, or like an understanding of his own opinions on compassion or what it means to help these people he runs into.
Right. He refers to saving people's lives as kind of like as a drug, essentially, and he hasn't saved anyone in like 2 weeks, so he's basically like withdrawing.
In withdrawal, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what other key features we feel like we need to identify, but the emergency room that they go to at what they call Our Lady of Misery is sort of like a picture of urban overwhelm or something, right? There's all these figures, a lot of them coming from either poor or like immigrant communities, and the entire emergency room is always like fit to burst, and there's no beds, and people are yeah, exactly, and there's a cop on watch, and all the people involved have been pushed to a state of cynicism or
right. They're all beyond much like way far beyond any idea of compassion. Like they've forgotten sort of the saintly part of this work that they're doing, and they just hate the job because it's a job. Yeah, I mean they are doing medicine and helping these people, but like you're saying, it's with like reluctance or with scorn or something. And there's a couple other threads. We have a new drug on the street called Red Death that is taken out young people and maybe causing some like drug war, gang violence type stuff. And then we have Patricia Arquette's character, who also has substance abuse issues that take them into the world of like a kind of light sleeper style, slightly higher class drug dealer. Exactly. Cy. And I think Frank Pierce, the Nick Cage character, throughout the film, like you said, Jake, is struggling to make sense of his world. He's unstable. He's like manic one moment and then extremely depressed the next, and drinks and tries to give himself like improvised drug cocktails. And there is a man also in this sort of network of people named Noel, who was Patricia Arquette's childhood neighbor, friend of her brother, and at some point in his life was shot in the head and is now mentally unstable and is sort of in and out of the hospital, and provokes a variety of responses from Frank Pierce and his coworkers, sometimes compassion, sometimes brutal violence. And then to get to the end, basically, this all comes to a head when Tom Sizemore and Nick Cage go to beat up Noel, and then Nick Cage has this moment where he realizes he doesn't want to do that and stops Tom Sizemore, and he goes back to the hospital and takes Mr. Burke, Patricia Arquette's father, off of life support, basically, and then goes to comfort her or be comforted by her in her apartment. And there's a recreation of the Pietà of him laying in, her name is Mary in the film. So he's laying in Mary's lap and maybe feeling like he's achieved a better understanding of himself, I think. Any major stuff that you guys feel like I missed? No, I mean, I think you mostly hit the big broad strokes of the film. I did want to ask, Ian, you've lived in New York City.
I have, yeah.
Soraya, have you ever lived in New York City?
No.
Okay. Because I think this film and After Hours, both of which I love very deeply, some of the most effective anti-New York City propaganda I've ever seen.
That's so interesting.
Never want to go to these places.
That's like fascinating. It makes me miss After Hours in particular. Makes me miss New York so much.
I mean, I think there's that New York sickness that people get, where they're like all of the awful experience of living in a 5th floor walk up that's 20 square feet, and I pay $5,000 a month for it, and you have to get in the Trader Joe's line 2 hours before you want to get in the door.
That's correct. Yeah.
Greatest city in the world. I love the Yankees. Like that.
It
to
is
me,
a sickness. You're right.
It's a sickness. Yeah. And this,
I also think it's weird because these films, both of the films, capture this kind of. It is something that happens in New York, but is also kind of a fantasy in some ways, which is like small town New York. Like somehow you live in one neighborhood.
You run into the same people. Yeah.
Right. Which again does kind of happen, but I'm not sure it's like the experience of people all the time there. But yeah, there's like 30 characters that see each other again and again. They go to the same apartments, the same houses again and again. And
right.
I don't know. I think it's trying to find what it means to be connected in a city of whatever it is now.
1 million stories,
5 million people or something. Yeah,
which means like people are doubling up on the stories. Like your hot dogs.
Sure. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Where should we head first?
I don't know.
Topic wise,
so much to talk about. Yeah.
Soraya, what jumps out to you as like the major theme of the film? On this your umpteenth watch.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm biased because like when I wrote about it, I just wrote about the Y2K anxiety, I feel like, and the way that the movie makes you feel like it's really the end times and the end of the world in a lot of ways. Like it's funny just because everybody thinks that the end of the world is happening when they're living, because they're like things just keep getting worse. Like, right. I don't know. Makes me think of the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode when they're like, and the streets are running with the ejaculate of the homeless or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That's just kind of the vibe I got from this, where it's like everybody like just, wow, everything sucks. Everyone is crazy. People are dying. People are doing drugs in the street and getting shot, and like nothing is safe. I don't know. Right. That's kind of, it's a gloom and doom thing.
And then you watch this film and you think like, wow, it doesn't even come up how these people are gonna pay for the ambulance ride. Like that seems not even to have been a concern of theirs at the time.
I mean, speaking of New York pricing, there's a moment where they I think it's John Goodman's character says something about Ray's Pizza being criminal for charging $1.50 a slice, and I was thinking, wow, different.
I think only because I watched it yesterday. I think it's Ving Rhames saying that, and he brings the slice.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
He brings the box of pizza, but
should call it Ray's prices. Is that anything? Is that interesting at all? Yeah. I mean, watching the film now, obviously, I think somebody I follow on Letterboxd said that they're still banging pots and pans for Nick Cage exclusively or whatever. Like it's hard not to think of the performative appreciation of first responders and like whatever we called them, essential medical workers at the time,
right.
And also about compassion fatigue, which I feel was like I feel like that was a big phrase that people talked about, especially in like 2020, 2021, about how it is exhausting to constantly feel for other people, which I don't know if that was like a psyop designed to excuse us all for giving up on the kind of COVID solidarity that we were showing, or if that's a real thing, perhaps a bit of both. But I mean, I feel like Nick Cage in this movie a lot of the time, and I don't even help anybody all that much, Yeah.
I mean, to connect it back to Soraya's points, I think part of the attraction of like millenarianism, or like the idea that the world is going to end or things are going to change, is because
Ian tried to remember the word millenarianism on like episode 2 of this show, and ever since he finally pulled it, yes, you're trying to remember millenarianism. I think on, mean, maybe the Dirty Harry episode or something, and I feel like you've used it like 800 times since then.
This is one of those fascinating things where, gun to my head, wouldn't have been able to say if I'd ever brought this up on the podcast before. Fascinating.
I mean, several of these films are about millenarian. Anyway,
sure.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
It's okay.
It's rare for me.
Yeah. This idea that like, because the world around you doesn't make sense, I think it's very attractive to say, well, it must be because it used to make sense and now things are collapsing and there's going to be some big event that allows us to make sense of the world again, right? Because I think it's so much more difficult to say actually, maybe this is just a slightly transformed version of the chaos that's always existed or has been constantly evolving, and that there's just so many difficult contradictions that we do have to make sense of. And I think that is, connected to what you're talking about, Jake, in terms of compassion fatigue or something, right? I agree that this film was making me think a lot about these sorts of essential workers who do work that we absolutely need, and we support the people who do this work, and yet it puts them in a position where they often end up both humanizing with people in Frank Pierce style, right? Seeing like in every person, there's something worth saving or worth being invested in, but also coming to very right-wing beliefs about like, oh, these people are doing this to themselves, or like this, they brought that I'm helping people who aren't trying to help themselves. Like the attending doc in the ER, the woman at the front
played
who's
by
just
Mary Beth Hurt, the wife of Paul Schrader. Yeah.
She's sort of like every person who comes in, she's like, why should I help you when you did? I mean, I grew up in a medical home. My father's a doctor, and obviously, I do teaching now. And I would say both
Bubble
those
boy
fields.
Style. He was in like he wasn't allowed
in a
to
sealed
leave.
home. Yeah, explains a lot of my stuff.
Yeah,
but no, I think both these fields. I mean, unfortunately, with teachers, I see it with people that colleagues of mine, people that I know, or people who write about this stuff. Where it starts from a place of compassion. And then maybe to protect your compassion for the child, you end up saying, well, it's the parents, even though I know that they're humans too, I have to blame somebody. And then eventually you start blaming just the 8-year-old, and you're like, I've tried to help them. I think there's a Tom Sizemore line in the film that I don't know if I wrote it down, but it's something like, they're talking about Noel, again, this mentally disabled guy, and they say, I took him to the hospital, gave him a cup of water, and was very nice to him. Here he is again, right? Like, if I helped him once, why does he need more help? It must be because he is a parasite on society or something.
Well, I think the Noel character is such a brilliant challenge to all these ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Connelly actually met somebody like this or just made it up, but like this man who is sort of pathologically convinced that he's dying of thirst, but is actually basically going to be like to get water poisoning.
Right.
And it puts you in this incredible like mind maze.
Trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you want so badly just to give this guy a fucking cup of water, and like we all know viscerally what it feels like to need a cup of water.
She's just like, I need a cup of water, so I gave him a cup of water. And you're right, and yet there's also other dimensions here.
Right, and then like the that difficulty of denying someone's like what they feel so strongly is the one thing they need to survive, but like you know differently. It's like it immediately explains how impossible this job is. But then, as you said, you get the Mary Beth Hurt types who are like, well, why should I waste these resources on you when you can't stop doing this to yourself? Which, of course, is a simplification of like how addiction works. But
sure, yep,
yeah, I don't know. And I feel like, Cage is like a lot of comparison has been drawn to Taxi Driver. Schrader refers to it not as a remake, but as a bookend of Taxi Driver, because you got this man drifting through the city in the iron coffin, as Schrader describes the cab. But he points out that they are elevated slightly from cab level. They're like above things, and I feel like
angelic.
Exactly, and like compared to that film, which is down in the muck and like on, he's sort of slowly, like miserably cruising through the city. There's a lot of acceleration. There's a lot of like fast motion in the cinematography here. It's
Benny Hill style fast motion.
Yeah, exactly. Or I was thinking of Naked Gun, the opening of Naked Gun, which I think is a riff on some movie that that Martin Scorsese has seen a million times that no one else has, but he's working with Robert Richardson again after they first worked together on Casino, and then he shoots Kundun with Deakins, and he's back with Richardson again. But I feel like it almost reminded me of 2001, of like the whatever, the Stargate or whatever they call it,
because you get light trails and stuff.
The light trails and stuff. And like you can't tell if this is Cage like on the verge of unconsciousness or like losing his mind, and all the lights are like smearing together, and there's the rush, but it's also like miserable, and there's that feeling of acceleration and like insanity is what I feel when I go to New York City, and so that's what it does feel like this movie. But I don't know, what stands out to you, Soraya, about the visuals of the film?
I mean, yeah, I think that with the acceleration like type shots of everything, it's kind of funny. It kind of goes into like, I don't remember if it was Tom Sizemore or Ving Rhames who's like, oh, you've aged 10 years since the last time I saw you, or whatever.
Ving Rhames, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's like, and it's only been 2 weeks. It's kind of like the way that living that kind of lifestyle and like working a 12-hour shift doing, really extremely difficult stuff puts a lot more miles, I guess, on the odometer than a lot of other jobs do. But then at the same time, like with the way that stuff kind of like with like the light trail stuff, you also kind of get the sense of the way that things kind of drag, and like even though it's going fast and everything's happening at such a high click, I guess, you still like feel like you're kind of like being dragged along through it, and it's like it's not an enjoyable high of adrenaline, I guess. It's like it's a really interesting way to show the fact that you feel like things are moving too fast, but you're also being pulled through it, and it's not happening fast enough for your taste because you kind of just want it to be over. I think
the crucial difference is that the Frank Pierce is not driving. He's always riding. Is he driving in any point?
He drives a few times. Yeah.
But he's like mostly passenging.
That's a great point. Like a jittery, like a weary adrenaline usage. And I think to your point, there's a rug pull late on in the film where I think he's with Tom Sizemore, and it's one of these moments, we've seen it several times, where they get a call and now they're going to slam on the gas, and then there's like a very slow shot of the ambulance moving through the intersection, so it sort of like zags, and I think it's achieving what you're talking about, Sarah.
Yeah, and I think that like something also that happens with that is the way we're like, and I don't know the proper term for this, so someone listening is going to be like, you dumb lady, why would you not know this? But it's like when the perspective or the angle shifts, so it's like the ambulance is going through like the wrong, like not the wrong way, but it's like coming through horizontally-ish instead of vertically through the screen. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or like when they get into that big car crash with Ving Rhames, and then like as he's climbing out of the side door of the ambulance, like the camera like flips its angle, I guess, or whatever. Like, I don't know. That's
the kind of Scorsese special where he's putting the camera in interesting and weird places to sort of like disorient us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Schrader, I forget where we heard him talk about this, but he's mentioned before the idea of crossing the line, like break what's called the 180 rule, right? Where supposedly, I mean, traditionally you shoot from like one side to establish clear geography, but you're right, Sarah. I mean, he does it, I think with Patricia Arquette, there's a weird moment where he shoots her from like 3 different sides, basically. And several times, like you're saying, switches from like ground eye level to bird's eye view in the same scene. And it is disorienting.
Birds are on the ground all the time. I see them down there.
Sometimes they're asleep, so a black screen can also be a bird's eye view. Yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly. It's interesting. Let me just confirm that I have my my timeline right here. But like, this feels to me very much like an extension of the style that Scorsese is exploring in Cape Fear, like, which really feels like Scorsese is in the 90s in Cape Fear, which is 1991, and then he immediately makes The Age of Innocence and is like 1890s or whatever.
Such like incredible back to back, I gotta say. Cape Fear to Age of Innocence.
But then he does. I mean, Goodfellas is right before Cape Fear. After Age of Innocence, he goes straight to Casino is the one that follows that up. So that's more of a Goodfellas style, and then Kundun is like very slow and spiritual type of cinema. Yeah. You don't get a lot of like crash zooms in Kundun, if you can imagine. But here he's able to just return to that kind of Cape Fear style, perhaps because this is set in the early 90s as well. But like, I feel like he's probably learning from like Christopher Doyle and with the Wong Kar-wai stuff and more, music video style, David Fincher type stuff.
Yeah, I think Robert Richardson had used like a skip bleach process in the film that came out the same year, Snow Falling on Cedars, and Scorsese saw him use that and said, "Oh yeah, maybe we could do something like that." Right, it creates this like desaturated, deep blacks and no color. Right. There's a great Cinephilia Beyond discussion of this film that goes very deep on this stuff. If you're curious about how they achieve the look.
Yeah, Cage had been recommended by De Palma, who had just worked with him on Snake Eyes, and I feel like there's a bit of De Palma style craziness in this.
There's an interesting thing I noticed too on this rewatch, and like I'm that crazy person who just like always has David Lynch on the brain. So like everything I see, I'm like, this is just like that. But like the way that they film Psy's apartment is very Blue Velvet to me. Especially the part when he takes whatever the sleeping pill is and he's like standing up screaming after he's like coming out of it, and it looks very much like when all of like the Frank Booth adjacent dudes are in Dorothy Valence's apartment, and the I feel like the colors are very similar to that. And then even when they get the call to go to Psy's apartment at the end when he's impaled on the fence, and they first see Kanita on the floor in the pool of water with her head shot. It is really reminiscent of how I think Blue Velvet looks and is blocked, kind of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's Blue Velvet has a bunch of isolated light, like when the guy is singing the Roy Orbison Blue Velvet, right? And there's like what he's holding, like one of those weird, I don't know what you call that type of lamp, right? But on himself. And then in the film, we also get Mr. Burke, this guy who's dying, is often under these like singular lights that separate him from their surroundings. So, obviously also hard not to think about Lost Highway when you're, watching this.
Yeah, of course.
Totally.
And her, with Patricia Arquette's hair sort of shifting blondness and brunetteness throughout the film.
And making me wonder if I'm just stupid. Like, was that her hair color in the last scene? I'm not totally sure.
This is fine. Ian, you're not in trouble. I just don't want anyone to like email us. It's Bobby Vinton song, Blue Velvet, although not written by him, but made famous.
But also the part that Dean Stockwell sings, it's a Roy Orbison song called In Dreams. But
thank you. Yep. Yes. Yep. Beautiful.
No
Soraya rescuing
the show.
Me. Jake's
Soraya
dead.
is co-host now. Yeah. God damn it.
I win.
Yeah. I was conflating those two elements on purpose.
We're in the Black Panther Lagoon, and I took the special juice that reduces my co-hosting power, so it's a fair fight.
Yeah.
Oh man.
The reverse purple flower juice. Stupid stuff. Do you think Schrader saw that? Probably had something really normal to say about it.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't know what his opinion was. Yeah.
Speaking of Black Panther, though, I was also, of course, reminded of Strange Days, thinking about the kind of the apocalyptic city film with isn't Tom Sizemore in that movie? Feels like Tom Sizemore's in that movie.
He might be.
Feel like it.
Yeah. We have already recorded our autofocus episode. I was not able to get to my point about Tom Sizemore doing autofocus stuff while he was alive. He had a website where he posted videos of himself having sex with people, but nobody cared because that's something a Tom Sizemore character would do, and so it didn't conflict with his having substance abuse issues. Also, something that Tom Sizemore. I mean, I think he was unfortunately had these issues since he was like 13 years old. Absolutely.
He was on Celebrity Rehab, right?
Sounds extremely possible.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I did used to watch that show. I'm pretty sure he was on it.
But I mean, he's wonderful as ever in this film. But he like Dennis Hopper. He's one of those guys where you wonder if he knows the camera's on.
Yeah, totally.
But to talk about Arquette a little bit, so she's married to Nick Cage at the time, and I feel like they have an easy chemistry that is palpable in the film. Like there's a lot of scenes of them together, like not speaking or not doing very much, but they just have like an easy comfort, which is, I don't know, sometimes it's just nice to see people who seem to be getting along with one another. Ian, you were going to say?
Yeah. I think she's a fascinating actress. I think she's extremely aware of her presence on screen, which is a presence where I sort of momentarily doubt her sincerity about some things. Like when she's talking about her frustration with her father in the past, and now she's, become aware of his imminent demise or his mortality, and realizes like more about why he was the way he was or something, or wants to reconnect with him. And she sort of rolls off her tongue so quickly that you, at least for me, the type of person I see in the world do this, I also have the same reaction where I think like, are you sort of like spouting this off because it is a genuine discovery that you are making, or because it's sort of like seems like something you should say? But then I think over the course of many of her movies, this film, and also the recent series Severance, she was in the Ben Stiller series. And I think it becomes a challenge to figure out like, oh, she does mean most of this, or maybe she has something else going on that doesn't mean that she's lying, but she's just like working through a different struggle, right? Over the course of the film, we find out that, she had this addiction, and she maybe
brought
just
on
had
by she was having trouble sleeping after the whole thing with Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
There we go.
That would be challenging for anybody. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Like hard not to be sympathetic.
Because not all the Dream Warriors survived the film, as far as I remember. So
You're right.
imagining yourself fighting him again with fewer warriors. Yeah. Is he Yaphet Kotto in that? Or is he he's in one of them?
Don't remember which one he's in.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, her presence is so interesting. She reminds me a little bit of Liv Tyler, but I mean, I think they both have a sort of dreamy, like far off
definitely
thing, which is fascinating when you think about. Soraya and I were talking about this a little bit on Twitter, but like, so he works with Rosanna Arquette in After Hours,
who I've just learned her real name is Rose. Actually, I always thought it was Rosanna.
And who is often playing kind of like hard edged or cynical characters
as like this kind of artsy, like what's going on with her? Is she a burn? Much more frenetic character.
And in Pulp Fiction, of course, she's the Eric Stoltz character's like girlfriend.
Now I think I've confused Arquettes. I made a mistake here. Which is the one in After Hours? That's
Rosanna.
That's Rosanna.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and David Arquette is, I think, sort of a fusion of the two, where he's like both kind of hip to things sometimes and a doofus other times. Like he can play both snarky and innocent.
Right.
But yeah, there's a very unique presence that a unique kundun, if you will, that Patricia Arquette brings to the film, where like. And there's this whole mention of like she hasn't spoken to her father in years. Mm-hmm. So there's also that weird feeling of like being with somebody who is or is not there. Do you guys think that, I mean, within the narrative of the film, do you think that Mr. Burke is actually speaking to him? Or do you think that this is like sleep deprivation delusion?
I would say yes. That was my gut reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that most of the things that are happening are
happening.
real as much as meaningful as that can be. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's this sort of like the Our Lady of Mercy, Our Lady of Misery thing is like a joke, obviously, but there is that kind of duality between mercy and misery, or like the saintly things he's doing in the bloody, nasty, screaming world that he lives in. And like, I mean, I think it's a Goodman character who says like, let's go look at the hookers, or maybe it's Sizemore's character. Like they're not actually
Rames, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not patronizing the sex workers, but they do like take the opportunity while they're doing this, admirable, difficult, compassionate job. They take the opportunity to go indulge in what feels base and selfish. And I think one of the things that stands out to me in this film and connects it to the previous Scorsese and Schrader collaboration, Last Temptation of Christ, is that it's like foregrounding how difficult and unbalanced beautiful the work of compassion is.
Yeah.
And like Marty in the he's my friend Marty in the Richard Schickel book, he says, he makes a joke about how the Cy Coates character is also crucified in a way, like he's impaled with
a spear of Longinus in him.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had to check my religious art, but when Cage takes the electrodes off Mr. Burke, one of them goes on the other side of your ribcage. But obviously calls to mind, and it's not like Nick Cage couldn't have played Jesus around this time, like
right.
just visually.
Totally.
Yeah, we get several of these things, not to steal from your article, sorry, but yeah, this type of imagery that comes up. I mean, we have a maybe immaculate conception in the film, right? In the form of like these two young. Right.
I
think they're meant to be Central American, but ethnically ambiguous people who
they said they left the island, so it's either probably Cuba or Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's a fair
Dominican
guess.
Republic, right. Maybe. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and she gives birth, but she gives birth in this case to twins, and one of the twins die. The one specifically that Nick Cage is trying to help. So I think to your point, Jake, this idea that like. The Last Temptation version, where something beautiful happens and only the miraculous comes out of it, is turned into a more realistic and gruesome thing where there's suffering on all sides.
And I think the scene that best illustrates this, and is one of the best scenes in this film and in any film, is of course the IB banging sequence.
That's the best thing ever.
Let's talk about IB banging.
Well, first of all, we got to shout out Ving Rhames, who he's in Patty Hearst, and he's incredible in Patty Hearst, despite the film having some weirdness about like leftism. Yes.
Yeah.
I take any opportunity I can to tell people that they should watch Baby Boy, the John Singleton film, where Ving Rhames plays the titular Baby Boy's like mom's boyfriend. He plays Tyrese Gibson's mother's boyfriend, who is an often pretty naked Ving Rhames. You get to see his
very
little butt. His back is, he's a huge man.
Yeah.
And he has like a very muscular but very compact butt that is just, it's interesting to see different ways that the bodies can be. Since you called me out for
bringing up millenarianism, this is your second little butt observation, I believe.
I'm talking about little butts on the show so much. Soraya, have you seen Touch?
I haven't.
Paul Schrader film?
Nope.
So you see Skeet Ulrich's butt in that film, and I just mentioned that it's really short. Like his torso is long, but his butt is
still looks hot. Don't worry.
5% of his torso length. No,
it is funny to like clock the crack length on people though when you have the opportunity to.
Now
sometimes
you guys
it's
can have the podcast. What's happening? Both of you have this
crack
illness
length with Jake and Soraya. Yeah, it's a probably monthly. You can't come up with that much crack length.
No.
Yeah, but okay, so they get a call about like an OD in a club.
Yes.
And they go
also,
into
I'm
this...
just a sucker for like in movies where there is a goth club, like anything where they have to go to a goth club. I love.
I was going to ask you for the realism here. What do you feel about this portrayal?
Right.
I honestly, I have no idea. I mean, it seems pretty legit. I don't know. Like a lot of that stuff is really like gross and nasty. Like it's kind of a bit crust punky, I feel like in this one.
Oh yeah.
Well, it reminded me of After Hours. There's the kind of industrial club. But then also, I believe there's a club in the Nick Cage film Vampire's Kiss that is a lot like this. I think there's
I still haven't seen that.
There's a
Jake,
goth.
You and I saw that together at a cursed theater.
Yes, at the theater, the Rep Theater on Fairfax, whose name we shall not speak.
Yeah. Wait, was it before or after the ownership change?
Before.
Okay. But well before.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
way
mid
before.
For sure.
Not mid problems.
No, we stopped going.
Well, I guess mid problems, but not mid revelation.
Before it was public. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Feel.
Fun movie though.
Yeah, very fun.
But yeah, so they get called to this OD in a club, and it turns out to be a member of a band who uses the nom du rock, IB bangin'.
Yes, really good.
And so they have this kind of double act where, because Ving Rhames' character he's a kind of like Christian Lothario who. Ian, say it with
Christian Lothario character. Yeah.
He will be our guest on next week's episode, Christian Lothario.
Yep.
But he's like he's a charismatic, a man who loves Jesus and also loves the ladies, including the dispatcher played by Queen Latifah, who's not the dispatcher played by Marty.
Nope. Yeah.
But so he is asking like these presumably like drug using goth
compatriots,
vampire band kids to join hands with him while Nick Cage is in the background putting together the actual like medical life-saving equipment. I think he gives him Narcan or whatever.
Yeah, he Narcans him.
Exactly.
And you have to use like 10 times as much Narcan because of Red Death, right?
Yeah.
Right. But there's like you're right that it's like a ringmaster moment where he like looks over at Nick Cage and Nick Cage whispers to him like, actually he's just a drug OD, like we can bring him back. And then he sort of turns back to the audience and like works that into his big thing. Yeah.
So yeah, he's gonna like resurrect him.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a combined idea that maybe he's hoping to convert these kids, but also he is like having fun being the hero of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course he delivers all these lines with just incredible aplomb. Ving Rhames, one of the greats.
Yep.
Still great. I mean, have you ever seen Ving Rhames be bad?
No.
I haven't seen every Ving Rhames film, but like he's elevating. He's bringing it.
He is. Absolutely.
But again, this is like an example of the kind of the half saintly and half selfish sort of task that these guys are doing. And like John Goodman's character is just talking about what restaurants are still open, you know, like it's foregrounding all the time that this is a job. This is every day for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that moment where John Goodman just like goes, oh, and then like, Nick Cage is like, whoa, what? He's like, oh, we can't do Chinese. I had that yesterday. And he like makes it sound like it's like something really horrible has happened. That is the funniest thing.
Which, yeah. I mean, let's just for a second shout out young John Goodman, 80s, 90s John Goodman. Obviously, he's still wonderful, but he had
where are you drawing the line?
He had a real swagger. I feel like he drops sort of like fucky John Goodman after a bit. But I feel like in like True Stories, Sea of Love, which we talked about on our City Hall episode, this movie, this is a man who could get it and like knows it, you know?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Barton Fink, even though he's like the devil in that film, he is also fucky, as you're saying. To use your
the devil's one of the fuckiest guys there is. As far as I know.
That is true.
Don't remember my Bible that well.
Yeah.
Speaking of the devil, Soraya, you very helpfully in your article talked about the Inferno parallels to the experience that Frank Pierce is having, and of course, Paul Schrader cannot go 2 sentences in an interview without bringing up Dante and Beatrice, as he likes to say.
That's right.
Exactly. That's that correct pronunciation.
Yes. Yeah. And he's like, so, you know, you talk about Frank sort of wandering in the underworld and rescuing his beloved from this apartment. Sort of, it's what's his name in Light Sleeper? John Latour.
Yeah.
It's what John Latour can't do in that film because he goes up to the apartment to try to, and he runs into Dana Delaney and then she jumps out of she falls from the Grace apartments. Bit of a clunky metaphor. But here he's able to rescue her and it's
so what do you see as Pierce's role here?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I feel like it's like a mix of that and like Orpheus and Eurydice kind of too.
Sure. Yep.
Or like with this one, like it's a little bit the kind of the opposite of the Dante, because in the what is the three part thing called?
Purgatorio?
It's like but it's like, what's the name? Oh, the Divine Comedy for the all three. Like it starts
Mr. Bean probably.
Yes, tell ya. It starts down in hell, and then they ascend upward, and then they are in the Purgatorio, and then they ascend upward through heaven. Whereas like this one is kind of like he has to go get her from up there. But the way he like goes in there and gets her is definitely like, I would say, more of like to me at least, I read it as more of an Orpheus type thing, especially because like he slings her over his back or whatever, and he has the steely determination to just like literally like move through without anyone getting in his way,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
Where I saw the Dante thing almost more like in the end with the Noel thing, even though like obviously Noel is not his beloved, but he still saves him from the bowels of the city, I guess. So
right, Noel is as I mentioned at one point covered in his own blood, and he's got dreadlocks, played by Mark Anthony, the wonderful Mark Anthony from Man on Fire.
Yeah,
also formerly J-Lo's boyfriend, husband,
formerly Mr. Jennifer Lopez, and then they worked together a few times after their split. So and I had confused him. I will reveal my humanity.
Really, yeah, really making space for this anecdote. Huh?
I was excited to talk about how Mark Anthony had made a joke in an interview about how he was going to sponsor a brand of extra small condoms.
Yeah.
And that I believed this and told a bunch of people this because I thought it was funny.
Yep.
It turns out, not only was he joking, and this was totally a joke, but it also was not Mark Anthony, it was Enrique Iglesias.
Man.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Nick Cage in this film can be your hero, baby. He can take away the pain.
True.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
It's all fine.
I just want to build off of what you guys are both saying, which is, first of all, I think there's a moment that is significant, or was significant to me, where Patricia Arquette's character has sort of like seen enough of her dad's suffering and seen enough of the inside of the emergency room, where she tries to say, like, now I understand why my dad was tough on us. He wanted us to be strong enough to survive this city. And Cage corrects her, or sort of like counters her, and says, this city doesn't discriminate. It gets everybody, sort of regardless of if you're strong enough.
Right.
And he says, we're all dying, Mary Burke. And I think it's interesting, given how cynical he is in other moments, the other EMS workers, how cynical they are.
Yeah.
I was texting Jake about something. When I was in high school, I did an independent study my senior year about doctor writers and medical fiction. And
wait, hold on a second. Really begging for that one.
It's true. I was begging for that. I deserve it. Yeah. But the thing that I was trying to explore when I was 17 extremely clumsily was whether like people like Chekhov or William Carlos Williams, or the author of this very popular with doctors book called House of God, this guy named Samuel Shem. This is a book that like every doctor has been reading for 50 years. And it is about how terrible it is to be an intern and you work. I mean, at the time it was written in like whatever, 1978 or something. They were working 100 plus hour weeks basically, and they were all going insane, and they all became extremely cynical and had like a set of rules about what you do and you don't do with patients, and how about
probably good for their performance, I would imagine.
Right.
Too.
Extraordinarily. Yeah. I mean, in the book is kind of a satire, so it's hard to judge like which behaviors they're approving of, but all the doctors are addicted to drugs. They treat the nurses like a harem, basically, that they work through and talk about extremely misogynistically. And they talk about patients like they're all idiots who barely deserve the help that they get. And obviously I felt like I saw a lot of that in this film, but I think it's there's a parallel, because it's sort of like other people's cynicism becomes the thing that brings you back from the edge of sort of like complete nihilism, right? Sort of like seeing other people fall into these traps helps you recognize which direction you're going in. And I think we see some of that in Cage's character. Or at least I felt like I saw some of that in this.
Yeah, well, and there's also the sequence when Sizemore beats the hell out of Noel and Cage stops him, and they bring Noel in, and he's actually like on the verge of death, where the doctor, whose name escapes me, but the bald glasses doctor, who's like the receiving doctor, he drops all of his goddammit, this guy again sort of bravado, and he's just in full life-saving mode. Even Gris, who is the security guy who never takes his sunglasses off, who's just a great sort of little side character who could be his own movie, he makes some crack about how Noel smells bad or whatever, but he doesn't stop them from going in the door, right? He lets them go on by. Yeah. Doctors are fucked up, man.
I mean, I think that's part of the thesis of this film. It's like, is it possible to make it and not become fucked up? And I think it's, I don't know, tough to say. It's the working conditions, the amount of death that you see. I think it's an incredible challenge for any human being to face. And I think it's sort of amazing that they don't come out, all these people who work in this field don't come out worse. And yet it is also frustrating to see. Like, I had a friend who used to be an organizer for EMT workers, and so many of them were like pretty virulently right wing. This is like in 2018 or 2017 or something when she was doing this. And yeah, I mean, I think it's, you come into contact with like the people in this film, people experiencing homelessness, people who have substance abuse problems,
and specifically people experiencing homelessness who are having life-threatening consequences because of it. You don't run into an unhoused person who's like,
I think that that
going
bias
about
is
their
part
normal
of the problem.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're almost never seeing the success stories. You don't get to follow up with your patients who, lived full lives. I will say, I think, I don't want to speak for my father, but I think that's a huge part of what helps him get through his work, because he works with premature babies. And obviously watching, I think, preemies die is not something that you can do and stay totally even keeled without the fact that you also get to see some of your patients when they're 12 years old and get to see that they're like in a skating competition or something, and you see like, okay, this is like why I do this, right? And I think for many of these people, they don't get that balm or like that counter measure, basically.
Soraya, you have any medical professionals in your family in your life?
Well, actually, my best friend is a nurse. She used to work in the ER in a very, very popular hospital in Los Angeles. So I've heard a lot of very interesting things, both about hospital dynamics and about patients and the things that she goes through because of how certain patients are acting. A lot of physical abuse. She's been hit, kicked, peed on, screamed at, like all of that kind of stuff. It's a lot.
Yeah,
very harrowing.
My girlfriend works in medical profession, not as a nurse, but has worked alongside nurses a lot. And the turnover is insane, especially with CRNs, which are CNAs. Sorry, CNAs. That's the term. Certified nurse assistants, who are they're like changing diapers and like cleaning up blood, all the worst shit. They're the worst paid, and the turnover is insane. Like you get no shows. Like people quit by just not showing up anymore. Yeah,
and it's crazy. Like because of that now, like the incentive to take on extra shifts, like they'll pay you like time and a half, basically, which is a lot of money. Right. Because like there's so few people who want to work now.
Right. Yeah, that's why you get traveling nurses and stuff.
Yeah. Especially after like the biggest, I guess, most like heavily talked about part of the pandemic and like the early stages, like so many people were quitting after that.
Right. Everyone posting pictures, selfies where they have like a mask shaped bruise on their face. And you also get, I mean, the reality of this economic moment is that the healthcare is basically the only industry that still exists, and so many people go into this field because it's a job that
it's
pays,
lucrative,
and you can, and also like, I mean, my girlfriend has a professional license and could like get a job tomorrow because she knows how to do all the stuff and could go do it, and so like, understandably, this is a much more secure career path than like film critic or podcaster, and so, which you understand, but then you get people who are in it for that reason, and the whole like helping people is totally secondary or even tertiary to that. I mean,
I think it becomes a very difficult question because I think, again, I don't want to speak for him, but I think my dad is very aware that there's one tier of doctors that is extremely overpaid, or maybe several tiers of doctors that are extremely overpaid, and then also you have like residents who aren't making any money basically. And then you have EMS workers who, I was looking this up, in Alabama last year, in some counties were making $11.50 an hour and working up to 84 hours a week. So
that's insane.
Jesus Christ.
Does that feel like an appealing job that would make you find all the compassion in your heart? Probably not.
No.
Right? So I don't know what the correct
I mean, I think
is.
the other interesting thing that this movie brings up that is still very true is that, especially like with the overcrowding in emergency rooms and stuff in general, there is not a there is less incentive to, well, also just because of the nature of like the industries that are supposed to help people in this country specifically are so separated that there's not really an incentive to actually address the root problem or fix the cause problem. And it's more just about putting a Band-Aid on the solution, for lack of a better phrase, to just get the person out and clear a bed for somebody else because there is so much overflow.
It's all triage, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, there's the added, I think, compassion fatigue or whatever problem of, or I guess that's the best phrase for it. But like we're seeing now, like COVID numbers in LA are maybe the highest they've ever been. They're like insane. There was a LA Times piece like a week ago that said, just assume everyone has it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And yet, like, when I was at the mall in Santa Clarita yesterday, my girlfriend and I were the only people in masks that I saw. And there's lots of discourse now about, like, basically you're either anti-mask or the kind of person who tells people, like, who aren't masking that you're excited for when their parents die so that they can understand why you're doing this or something. There's no, like, middle ground. And I think it's, we've all been made crazy by this extraordinary show of, health solidarity that we all went through that seemed to amount to nothing. And then the authorities, the medical authorities and the government authorities telling us, like, it's over, everything's fine, but nothing has changed. It's gotten, it's continued to get worse. And so, like, I think individually we're all kind of feeling this, on some level, feeling this conflict between, like, I want to help the people near me. I want to be like a good person and not contribute to additional suffering. But, like, when do I get to rest? When do I get to fall asleep in Patricia Arquette's apartment?
Right. I mean, to Soraya's point, I think the idea that obviously triage is necessary and very upsetting to see, and it's something that sort of sparks a strong reaction, right? The idea that you could be in an emergency room and somebody's telling you what is happening to you, the worst thing that has happened to you in 5 years, is less important than what is happening to somebody else, because we have limited resources, and the frustration of knowing that medicine is run as a for-profit business in most of the country.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, there's this like doctor or healthcare advocate. I think his name is Dr. Berwick, but I don't remember exactly. But he has sort of like been going around basically to doctors trying to point out that we spend as a country like millions and millions of dollars on statins, which are like for cholesterol medicine.
High cholesterol,
Right. And
it's a dad medication.
It is. And yet it I think on average maybe adds like a year to people's lives, whereas investing in like hunger and education programs in certain zip codes will add like 25 years to somebody's life expectancy, right? So in terms of what you're talking about, like addressing root problems, it's not glamorous. It's not maybe as immediately clear how it's helping people. And yet, if you want to clear out emergency rooms, that's probably the way to do it. Is to just like go address
like you have to like
issues.
Address the problems that will eradicate homelessness and hunger and all that stuff, and you'll see a lot less people ODing on drugs or coming in because they smell really bad, like Mr. O, and got too drunk and fell out of their wheelchair or whatever. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine myself having trouble on the third, fourth, fifth Mr. O call.
Yeah, that's the question.
Totally.
Summoning the same amount of compassion that I would the first time. Yeah. And like, I was looking up the racial disparities in medical care, and there's all these statistics about how black and brown patients are less likely to receive opioid pain medication, and when they are, they're much more likely to be like closely monitored by their doctor about their opioid use, whereas they'll just hand a bunch of codeine to a white lady and send her on her way.
Yep.
And like, I think maybe some of it is that we need to invest in mental health treatment for like ongoing sort of programs for the people who have to endure this stuff to preserve their compassion. But also, I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is. That's why I don't want to move to New York after watching this movie. You know, because you would hope that if someone sees fewer of these incidents, then maybe they would remember that they'd be able to experience the urgency of it. But
well, yeah, that's the tricky. I mean, but then you get small towns, because I mean, the thing people say about big cities, right, is that like, oh, everybody's wacky there, and you're inhuman, it's impersonal, and you don't know your neighbors, and nobody cares about anybody, and you know, you can get shot in the street for $1 or whatever, and yet you go to a rural area, and I'm not saying that it's better or worse necessarily, but it's not like, you know, you get people being extremely judgmental or homophobic or you know, also right wing and sort of blaming people for their own problems, and you know,
and also the stuff is just older. Like you're less, you're more likely to get like more up to the minute, you know, CT scanners or whatever in New York City than you are in
or half a chicken at 2 a.m. I mean, that's truly, I don't eat half a chicken, but it did make me miss being able to get half a chicken at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I was going to say, did that tempt you guys? Did that tempt you, Jake, the half fried chicken?
Yeah.
I certainly did. I'm trying not to eat at 2 a.m. as much as I did in the past.
That's a great point, yeah.
But if I, you know, I haven't joined the air fryer bandwagon yet, but
Me neither.
if I hop on it, some cauliflower is getting tossed in there at 2 a.m. That's for sure.
I will say there are a few things that compare to like a drunk 2 a.m. Bob's Big Boy outing, you know?
Yeah.
But,
well, Ian and I used to visit the Fat Sal's on.
Nice.
What is what's
Turtles?
Gailey?
I think that's Gailey. Yeah.
In Westwood. Turtles.
I grew up in Westwood, so I'm very familiar.
Whoa.
Jerry Ferrara no longer
UCLA. Schrader's erstwhile home.
Yes,
I did.
Ian and my erstwhile home. They call it Terangulus over there. Some of it.
That they do.
Did you go to UCLA?
No, my mom actually did, and my other best friend went to UCLA also.
But you fled the neighborhood.
I fled the neighborhood to go to Occidental, so I stayed local. I just went to the east side. Yeah,
didn't make
Exotic.
it that far. Yeah.
Yep. Nope.
Were you there with Barack? Same time?
Yes, exact same time. I'm aging wonderfully, in case you haven't noticed.
Today or something.
Wow.
I saw somebody post a gif of him sinking a 3.
I mean, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Without context, like no context for anything else he's done, sinking a 3 is pretty badass.
Yeah,
he sunk some
smoke screen of the Obama presidency.
I was gonna say,
exactly.
He sunk some
pretty cool.
He sunk some 3-year-olds at a wedding in Pakistan.
Yeah, that's also true. Damn.
Yeah,
you know. So that's pretty funny that I said that. I noticed some Schrader, some resonances specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Neon. Neon Bible stuff. Yeah,
that neon halo is so corny, but it's so fucking cool. I fucking love it.
Halo, and then in Cat People, Malcolm McDowell's character has like a neon church.
Oh, that's true.
Operates
I forgot about that.
And then
so
we don't see it in Touch, but there's a reference to Christopher Walken's character. I think had like the largest neon cross in the world or in the Northern Hemisphere or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so like. That mixed with the kind of the overexposed or whatever high contrast lighting. I don't know the lighting stuff, but there's like there's this sort of almost painful to look at light in the film that's kind of like, you know, maybe the light of God or heaven, but it almost hurts. It's like unpleasant. There's a sense of this, you know, being Christ-like is like painful, as we see in the film.
Yeah. And to bring it back to our previous discussion, sort of like, is what's happening to Mr. Burke, or like, is he really speaking to Cage? We get a bunch of religious stuff. I mean, Ving Rhames is like telling stories where he recognizes the presence of God. And like you're saying, even though he's this big outsized character who we don't totally take seriously. You know, Nick Cage tries to talk about a woman being, or she like tried to kill herself, is blown back up onto the cliffs of Moher.
Yeah.
And he says,
right.
Cage says, you know, the wind blew her back up, and I forget what Rames says exactly, but it's something
He's
like
that was
"Excuse
Jesus,
me."
actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't tell me that was the wind. That was the good Lord Jesus Christ. And I think
exactly.
Cage's response is like, yeah, that too. Sort of like you can be like the religious is there. And also there's other stuff where so sort of like, is this guy seeing ghosts? Yes. And something else, I think, at all points.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even an element of that there's an element of this kind of like push-pull of the holy and the worldly, even in the collaboration between Schrader and Scorsese. So they had worked together on Last Temptation, and they had a bit of a conflict there.
Yeah.
And
Scorsese constantly like doing rewrites with other collaborators after Schrader comes in. So he does it on Taxi Driver. He does it on Last Temptation, sort of like correcting elements that he wants to see differently on screen.
Yeah. And then, so they had talked about a George Gershwin biopic that Schrader had written, where Gershwin was going to be played by De Niro. Mm-hmm. And then they were talking in the 80s about, they had an idea to remake The Bad and the Beautiful with De Niro. And Schrader did an outline, met them both, and it turned out to be very acrimonious, constantly arguing. Marty wanted the credit, and I'd said, I've done 3 films with you. I've written 3 scripts for you. I'm not going to start sharing credit. As the situation got more and more tense, I said to him, this is going to end up in one of 2 ways. Either this film is going to get made and we're going to become enemies, or this film is not going to get made and we'll stay friends. So let's just assume the latter is true and just quit. We've done 3 films. That's enough. We'll have dinner once a year. And then Scorsese said that he had no choice when he read the book. He had no choice about who was the man to adapt it. He said, I thought, who do I know who can get inside this man's spiritual crisis driving through the west side of New York at night? The only screenwriter I know who can get inside that man's soul is Paul Schrader. And so Schrader has said basically that, he said, it's not really that much of a collaboration. There were a number of conversations, but with this kind of material, we can pretty much finish each other's sentences and we know how we're each thinking. It's just a matter that if we feel we're on the same page, I take off to work. He was in post-production on KUNDUN at the time, which was fortunate for me because he didn't have time to micromanage the writing. So after a short discussion at dinner and one 10-minute phone conversation, I just went off and wrote it. But Schrader has later said, basically, it used to be that he was a writer and Scorsese was a director, and now that there's 2 directors working together, he acknowledges that he can't just be the writer.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's maturity to that.
So I assume they still have dinner
once a year.
But yeah, I don't know. There's something about there's a lot of push-pull around this film, a lot of repellent feelings of being repelled and also being attracted.
Yeah, there's an interesting parallel I see with like this and a lot, I guess, like their other New York stuff with the New York movies of Abel Ferrara, because I feel like both of them also being, all of them being dudes who have interesting relationships with God, a Christian or Catholic God, is that they managed to like, and it must be something about New York that I am not privy to, but it's, and probably something about being maybe Italian or not water. In New York. Yes, it is the water. The tap water. It's the answer to everything. Where they like, the sacred and the profane exist simultaneously in every frame, and that's kind of like the holy war of the city in a way, where it's like, I feel like it's encapsulated in the pint-sized nun, Sister Fetus, I think is what she's called. When like incredible. She's, you know, wearing her habit and all of that stuff, but she's got that little fetus keychain, and she's like, enough of these leotard lap dances and Mexican divorce and all of this shit. And she's like saying all of these things that to her are offensive and profane, but she is wearing, you know, like the mantle or whatever, the holy outfit, and it's just like all the, it's a really strange thing to see a childlike looking lady, just because she is tiny, also like spouting all of these insane phrases, you know. It's like a good encapsulation of that.
Yeah, I remember at UCLA there was like annually there was this pro-life giant wall of enormous Mao-sized photos of aborted fetuses that they would put up in the middle of campus. And it's like, yes, this is an unpleasant business. You're the ones putting this up in, like, you're the ones who have gone to presumably some kind of professional printer and like blown up an image of a 3-week fetus I guess that's probably just like a cluster of cells, an image of a 35-week fetus to 9 by 9 feet. Like, you're also doing something unpleasant here.
Yeah, I think we haven't really touched on it, but I think it's good comparison with Abel here, because I will say I'm going to make a bunch of our past guests mad at me. I like Bad Lieutenant. I don't love Bad Lieutenant. I think it's a good movie, but I think it is...
We had the Bad Lieutenant on the show. That's who he's talking about.
Yeah. He was so scary. Can I say that?
Yeah. Did he hang dong too?
Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He did. And he's like, where do you find the time to work out this much? And like,
doesn't seem the amount of drugs that you're doing in like late night apartments. Yeah, it doesn't seem to.
He made us stick our tongues out while we were recording. Yeah.
Makes sense.
No, I mean, I think part of the reason that I think that film is very good, but to me doesn't gel as well, as I think to me the preferred modes of exploring this like sacred profane stuff that you're talking about, Soraya, which I think is, you're absolutely right, is either to do it with an amount of sort of like sincerity and emotional investigation of how this appears in humans, or to do it with a certain amount of absurdism and surrealism and this sort of like playfulness where you're not totally sure, is this person a symbol? Is this person a human being? Right? Am I supposed to see them as somebody who actually has like wants and desires, or do they just stand in as like a zany, disruptive force in our protagonist's life, which I think we get in After Hours and here. And I think to me it's a perfect line of absurdism where most of the stuff in the film is stuff that could happen to any of us, but it would be like the craziest thing that happened to you in a couple years, and then it just happens like 6 times a night to these characters.
Right. It's their job to go have crazy things happen to them.
Right. Which I think is a good area to live. I think it does capture something sort of like more real than just talking about the banal in some ways, right? Because these are sort of like the outsized experiences that do define our lives. But I guess I prefer that, not that it has to be comparative, but I prefer that to the sort of like provocative Abel Ferrara version, which is like to just have like a big dramatic scene in a church where a guy's yelling, but also shooting off his gun and saying swear words. And, is this like challenging you as an audience?
Well, Ian, I don't mean to alarm you. This film also has the Bad Lieutenant in it.
It does have
one of them. Yeah, it does. It has the Herzog one.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. You're right. He's one of the famous 2 Bad Lieutenants. Yeah.
What a picture.
What a picture. Yeah. There's I get what you're talking about. And I think Ferrara's more the provocateur and he's even more of a stinker than Schrader.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason Tarantino likes him, and I think is, sort of gets close to some of that attitude.
Tarantino, of course, recently out to dinner with Paul Schrader and Billy Crystal. I don't know if you guys saw those photos. Who else was there?
Joyce Carol Oates there?
Darren Aronofsky was there. Joyce Carol Oates was a different dinner.
Yeah,
it was a different dinner. I don't think Joyce Carol Oates is hanging out with
Quentin,
and Billy. Sure. Billy Crystal looking very normal, looking like a really normal man. Yeah. Hairline receding from
jazz man, though. I will say.
I would agree. I would believe that. Yeah. And less grease paint because she's so small. Save money. That's important. Yeah, I think, Marty and Schrader both, I think, they have that beautiful combination of the church boy and the deviant, where like they still want to include both, where Ferrara is much more nihilistic.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But these guys still find the holy in among the muck, among the blood-soaked dreadlocks. Really just the shaking of the hair and the blood getting on Nick Cage upset me so much.
I know, it's gross.
Yeah. but I think that's like such a great, speaking of like mundane challenges. I mean, I think asking teachers to be compassionate when you're also like being thrown up on sometimes, right? That's, I mean, the challenges aren't just these like big abstract, like, can I help kids from a difficult background? It's like, can I teach like syllables when I can smell the barf that is on my pants? That's like a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a tiny microcosm of this experience. I work at a nonprofit, and like a lot of the people who are regulars at our sort of nonprofit events, the people who show up frequently at 10 a.m. on a Thursday are not that cool because like they don't have anywhere better to be at 10 a.m. on a Thursday.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of balance like, well, this person is here and helping. At the same time, I hate them deeply, but and it's like when you have enough experience with like you're hanging out with intellectually disabled volunteers enough that you're like saying I hate that guy about somebody with Down syndrome, then you have to sort of like back up a little bit and have a little distance.
I think it's I appreciate that. I think that is how you catch yourself sometimes.
The guy I hate actually doesn't have Down syndrome. He has
that's good.
Severe autism.
Yeah, clearing the air. Good job.
All of the guys with Down syndrome that I've met, great guys. Love all those guys.
Yep.
A lot of fun.
Good stance.
Shout out to Steve. First of all, shout out to my buddy Steve, who undaunted by any Zoom call, he's appeared on many a Zoom call that he'll just like walk up behind you.
Terrific.
Great guy.
Yep.
Do we have any sort of final thoughts?
I got a couple final questions, but I want to let our guest, if she wants to.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. No, let's. You can cook, Ian.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, my boring question, since just taking advantage of your expertise, in addition to asking about the club, I wanted to ask about your opinion on the soundtrack, because it's interestingly sort of, I mean, it's very Scorsese in that it's like picking these sort of like minor pop hits that are like
Van
punchy
Morrison,
and have
deep cuts.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we get REM, we get The Clash, we get the Marvelettes, I think, are in there. So what do you think about, I mean, it's not what you would imagine. If I told you the story of a guy in a spiritual crisis, maybe not the soundtrack that you would assume.
No, I mean, I think for that reason, though, it's so much cooler than other stuff. Like, I don't know, I've been, at the gym, I like to turn off my brain. So I've been listening to the Rewatchables episode about the two-parter about Pulp Fiction, and they're talking about the soundtrack a lot and the mixtape quality to it. And I think that it's really like, this one's like the fact that it is like more, I guess, minor works from major artists or very New York songs, like You Can't Put Your Arms Around a Memory, I think comes up at one point.
That's right.
Or like, I don't know, when he's with Sizemore and they're speeding in the ambulance and he's all hyped up and they're listening to like Janis Joplin, I think. I'm like, that's a really inspired choice. Like, I think it's really cool that it's not stuff that you would immediately think of and stuff that hasn't necessarily been reclaimed in the way that other movies with like hipper soundtracks have. So
right, it's not like you're not hearing. I think it's a combination of the two. Maybe is that Janis Joplin song. It's not like that's appearing in every third film.
Yeah.
In the Schickel interviews, Scorsese talks about when he went on a few ride-alongs with EMS workers, and he said that the pop music is like ever present and part of the surreality to him and part of the kind of unending adrenaline rush, that there's always like loud music going because they're trying to stay awake, and also it's weird to be hearing What's the Frequency, Kenneth, while you're like trying to revive someone who's been stabbed or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it does add to, you're right, the fact that they also use the ambulance to go get coffee or like take a nap or they give somebody a ride does feel, it sort of like demystifies or something. I don't know. It makes sense that this is all part of the same quality. Oh,
in parallel to Taxi Driver, I do also want to shout out Captain Barney, the dispatcher,
Captain Barney,
who is sort of a parallel of the character played by the guy who plays Rocky's mob boss,
the taxi
guy.
driver boss you're talking about. Yes,
but here, we just get this like sort of almost sketch comedy style like reversal game where Nick Cage is trying to get fired.
Say something mean, he says something nice instead.
He cannot get himself fired. And that's just fun.
I mean,
and it looks a lot like the Taxi Depot from Taxi Driver as well, which is
definitely. This is Arthur Nascarella. We have two Sopranos, or future Sopranos. I guess maybe at this point they've both been in Sopranos. I don't know I'm not sure what
Sopranos
the timing is here.
I think airs in 1999. Oh, and in the Schickel interview, Scorsese also mentions the scene where there's a fake Scorsese on the Sopranos, and Christopher says, "Marty, I loved KUNDUN."
That's we have direct crossover. But yeah, the Captain Barty character says something like, "I never said I could bark better than you." Like, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
He just has these nice little lines where he's like ceding ground to Nicolas Cage's character. Like, I love you, and I would never say that to you.
Well, like Onan ceding ground. It's
That's
another
the
Bible,
baby. Yep.
Damn.
That's the part that I've read. Any other final? Oh, and you and Aida Turturro. You didn't. We failed to mention.
That's right. Yes, Janice, of course. Yeah.
Yes, Janice. She's Tarantino's favorite character on The Sopranos. Now that is a joke about how he said in an interview that he always wanted to have sex with Janice from the Muppets.
Wow.
And that's for my real Tarantino interview heads out there.
Yeah, like a Norton Critical Edition note to explain this joke.
For Jake. Yeah. On that awful thin paper. Hate that Norton paper. Anybody listening from WW Norton?
Those were my New York employers that you're bad mouthing. So.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But you're right. That is bad paper.
The paper's fucked.
Yeah.
Ian's job was to slice a regular size piece of paper in half, and it's really hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I got fired. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so final thoughts before we sort of
what were your other questions, Ian?
Yes.
My only other question, we keep getting references. I mean, we have the punks in there. There's references to anarchy, and then Sizemore says like, well, we can't just beat anybody up. That would be anarchy. And then immediately uses like a taxi driver trying to pull out as an excuse for a racist rant, and then goes to beat up a mentally unwell man.
It's also funny because Nick Cage starts breaking the windows with Noel or whatever, and then he's like, what are you doing? But then after they take Noel to the hospital, Frank walks by and Noel is just beating the shit out of his ambulance.
Oh yeah,
with a bat.
He's beating up the
headlights.
I wondered is he frustrated that Noel survived, or is he just generally angry, kind of unplaced anger that he's taking out on them?
I mean, I guess that's part of my question. What does it mean to be upset in general? Is that more or less meaningful than finding flimsy excuses to be mad at a race or mad at, I think, more reasonable things or something? I don't know.
Well, I think when you're mad at a race, you're from my understanding, mostly misplacing upset at something else. Unless it's with one race, and we won't say which, but if you want to guess, podcastingforme@gmail.com. Don't actually answer that.
Please don't do that.
Oh, speaking of races, I did want to just shout out Cliff Curtis. The man of every race.
That's true. The man who's playing many races on film is what Jake's referencing.
Cliff Curtis is Hollywood's most ethnically ambiguous man.
Yeah. I would like to throw in Alfred Molina as a second to that.
Great. He is, yeah. But Alfred Molina is Spanish. That guy cannot be doing what he's doing. Cliff Curtis is...
No, he can't.
He's of Maori descent, and so he at least has some experience of being othered and colonized that he can maybe draw on when he's playing Iron Man's captor. Is he in Iron Man, or am I just imagining that?
I don't think
no idea.
So, but
okay,
was he really in the first Iron Man? Yeah, it's true. Well, he could play Middle Eastern, Mexican, all sorts of stuff.
He's in Training Day. He's in the one thing he can't play though, pedal steel. I never picked it up. I don't know. Come on, shut up. Ian, shut up. Did you have any further questions?
Those are my final questions, I think, mainly. Yeah. What about you guys?
I mean, I think the line, one of the final films of the final films of the line is when the voice of Patricia Arquette coming through the face of Rose, or Rosa, as she's known in the Mexican release, is no one asked you to suffer. It was your idea, which is sort of it's a connects this and also separates this from the prior Schrader Scorsese collaboration. you've not been appointed by God to suffer. It's your decision to be this vessel, this witness, this like grief mop. And he allows someone else to take care of him, because no one has laid their hands on him the way he's touch style laying his hands on others until the end of the film.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moments in the film where characters either do or don't recognize like this tiny fleeting beauty around them. The aforementioned Cliff Curtis character, I think, looks at the sparks flying over Manhattan,
that's wonderful.
And says something like, this is
I love this
incredible.
city, I think.
Yeah, and then earlier on, there's a moment where we're looking up at Nick Cage, and there's like a wet window behind him, but it looks like these stars illuminated behind his head.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like. And then, in classic Schrader fashion, we have some on-screen books in the form of Journey to the End of the Night and a few other things that I think share this common theme of like, the world is awful, but are you able to locate things that will make it livable for you or beautiful for you or something sort of against that backdrop? So I think you're right, Jake.
Good film. Highly recommend the film Bringing Out the Dead.
Yes. Good film.
Good movie.
And much... I think cautiously would recommend the film Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which features the line about bring out your dead. One of these articles I read said that the title was a reference to that film, which I don't think is true. I think it's a reference to the phrase.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Phrase.
Right.
But it's also the name
thing,
of the book itself, not that. I mean, it's not
no,
like they made it up for the
they
film.
suggested that Joe Connelly took the title from. Yeah, I don't know. I think also this ending was Schrader's invention, which is very Schraderian. This moment of grace at the end where he finally connects with a woman, not
pickpocket,
not through a pane of glass or bars, but
it is always a woman providing redemption.
Of course.
To the male characters, which I mean, look, I actually don't have a problem with it. TBH, a lot of women do. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. That's just how he feels. I'm cool with it. So,
and I think as one of the preeminent sort of capturers, depictors of like impotent male rage or sometimes potent male rage, to identify, he says the difference between Frank and Travis Bickle is that Travis wants to be alone and Frank wants to be with people.
Right.
And I think he's always identifying that, like, the solution, the way out of your anger is to be with another person. And they tend to be blonde women, but, they don't have to be.
Red-haired Sarandon,
yes.
And I mean, you're right, Soraya, where it's like a difficult question of, is it better to at least encourage male humility and maybe recognize female labor in the sense of something that that they have been doing for thousands of years, and is it better to be realistic about that? In some ways, I could see how maybe we should just be clear-eyed and say lots of women are having to do this all the time, whether they signed up for it or not. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and I invite all those women to come on the show. I don't know, whatever. Who cares? Speaking of which, should we conclude with our concluding segment?
Sure.
This is, of course, the sexual obsession check-in. This is fine. It's fine. Don't be scared. Don't get worried. Now, earlier this year, Paul Schrader was talking about his upcoming film, which, as far as we know, is going to be titled Non Compos Mentis.
Yep.
And he had this to say about it.
I've never written a script about sexual obsession, and so that's the one I'm doing now.
And we've taken it upon ourselves here on the show to try to determine to what extent Schrader has ever written a film that's not about sexual obsession. We have a few on the list, and I think this one might count. I mean, I think it's a film about obsession, but distinctly non-sexual.
Not sexual. Yeah.
There's not a ton
minor
of sex
sexual
in the film
elements.
at all.
I mean, they talk about virginity. There's sex workers, like you're saying. Certainly, Ving Rhames maybe is in a different movie where he is experiencing a journey of sexual
there
obsession.
is the whole conversation they have about giving mouth to mouth, and then I think don't they talk about eating pussy? Sorry, I didn't know how else I was going to say that.
We know about that.
I'm sorry
heard
to
about
break
that.
it to you guys, but they have like
Yeah,
the other
Taking
like
notes.
EMT drivers and Gris are having a conversation about that, I think, and about how like Ving Rhames is like, I will never give mouth to mouth to a white woman or something like that.
Right. He's preserving the race or something. Yeah,
Yes,
I mean, there's
yeah.
it's present as ever,
Yeah.
but I think it is pretty far from
Yeah.
Frank's mind.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
Rames maybe calls himself a true cocksman at some point.
Yes,
Which
he
is
does
just
say that.
One of those mystifying
rocks.
lines where I say, yeah,
So
this
great.
is so cool. I don't really know what that means, but okay.
I think he's just like practiced at wielding it. Maybe is
Yeah.
what he means.
it's hard to say. But I think you're
He's
right.
like
For Frank Pierce, not a lot of
Yeah.
sexual obsession going on.
Ian and I via text were exploring how
This is Jake's
Frank-
joke. I want to give him credit and also blame.
Frank Pierce. You mean Prince Albert? Hey, come on. There's other ways to do it, I think. Also,
Oh
Yep.
man.
wouldn't do that myself. It seems like a invitation to infection. Seems
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
hard to keep that stuff out of there. I mean, that's where it's like pee-pee down there. All right, that's about gonna do it. Losing it today.
What a
About gonna do
profound
it
end. Yeah.
for our episode on Bringing Out the Dead. Wonderful film. Wonderful, dare I say it, guest. Thank you to Soraya for joining us
Thank you
today.
so much, Soraya. This was
Thanks
great.
for having me. This
Yeah.
was fun.
I agree. So glad to hear you say that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on, where folks can find your work? By the way, I do want to share that past guest of the show, Zoomer Josh, my coworker Josh, who is 22, I believe is like the number 5 Night Talks listener on Spotify at this point.
Oh my god. Wow,
Thanks
thank
to
you.
my
Thank you,
introduction.
Josh.
Yeah,
and thank you.
Josh.
Oh my
Hey, no
god.
problem.
Wow, that's sick as hell.
Big fan, Josh. Yeah.
So my band Night Talks just put out a new song called Dream I'm In. You can find our stuff on all the streaming services. We also do videos of the live and music video variety on YouTube. You can find those. If you're in Los Angeles, we're playing at the Lodge Room on October 13th. Buy a ticket. Please come see us. We would love to sell that show out. Aside from
We can do
that, thank you. We'll zoom you in from Oaxaca.
Thank you. This is
bigger
great.
than the
Yeah.
band, just
Of
sitting
course,
in the
yeah.
background, kind of.
We got you. And then aside from that, I like to write about movies. I have some stuff I've been working on, hopefully coming out on a soon to be announced website.
Ooh.
My dear Twitter friend Veronica, depending on when she pulls the trigger on that. Other than that, I'm trying to write
Cool.
more, but it's all on my Substack. You could just find those links on my Instagram or Twitter, just Soraya Sebghati on all of that stuff. So yeah, that's about it.
The Substack's good, we can say.
Yes.
Thank
Oh,
you. I
yes. We
appreciate it.
can
Thanks for
definitively
reading
say
it.
that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I mean, you did like most of the work for us. I just
Yeah.
had to read.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's an essay by the guest.
This may be more stolen female labor that we're taking advantage
Well,
of. Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works for the movie. It works.
Hey, exactly. And Soraya is lightly bleaching part of her hair as we
Yeah,
speak.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yes,
As for
thank you
us,
so much.
remember to subscribe, write a review. It helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, telepathically.
Whoa. Yeah.
Freudian. Telepathically tell a dying man. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcast Inform Me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you would like to become Ian's understudy, you can email us at podcastinforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Next week, autofocus with a guest. So join us for that one. Until then, is there like a way that somebody says bye in the movie that would be thematically
Say one of
appropriate?
those sort of 60s radio DJ Marty lines where, you got a noose but nothing to hang it on or something.
Oh, true. So true.
You got a noose but nothing to hang it on.
Bye.